This is the American Muckrakers podcast, Muck You. I'm David Wheeler in Spruce Pine, North Carolina, here to gut the lies and spill the filthy truth. My co-host, Mo Davis, is running to be the next Congress dude from NC11, coming to us today from Asheville. Mo, let's get mucking.
All right. Well, thanks, David, and thanks to everybody for tuning in again. It's a nice day here in Western North Carolina, and we're pleased to have another great guest on today, and someone I've got a lot in common with. Kevin Techau is someone I met many, many years ago when we both were serving in the Air Force JAG Corps. And Kevin's out in Iowa, and like me, he's running for Congress. So, I mean, I'm always happy to see veterans step up and serve again. So he's running in Iowa's 2nd Congressional District. The incumbent is Republican Ashley Hinson. Kevin did a number of years on active duty and then switched over to the Iowa National Guard and served there for another 20 years and, like me, retired as a colonel. He was the Iowa's Commissioner of Public Safety, and more recently, he was the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Iowa. So, hey, Kevin, thanks so much for taking time to join us today on Muck You.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity to visit with you guys.
Well, let's start with what made you decide to run for Congress?
Well, the current situation, when I took a step back and I looked at my record as a veteran, as someone that's had the opportunity to serve under Tom Vilsack when he was governor, and Tom Harkin recommended me to President Obama and served as U.S. Attorney. I looked at that record and looked at what's going on with the current representation. I've always believed that we work best when we work together, and that's just not happening in Washington. The current representative, Ashley Hinson, she just votes for headlines. She's not looking for solutions. She's not working for Iowa. She's pushing culture wars, cutting services for seniors and veterans, feeding the chaos. It's performance politics, and it's just pure hogwash. And I think it's time to Iowa, in this part of the state, got a representation that's going to work for them and lift people up and not punch down.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your district. What does it encompass?
It's 22 counties.
Wow.
I would consider it light purple. It went for Obama twice, and it's gone for Trump since. Starts in the southern part here in Cedar Rapids, but it goes all the way up to the northeast corner, Alameda County, up along the Mississippi, Dubuque, Clayton, and Alameda County, and then runs along the Minnesota border over to Mason City, and then down, picks up Waterloo and Cedar Rapids, and then goes down to Poweshiek County, which is where Grinnell College is, and back over to Cedar Rapids. So it's a mixture of agriculture, but there's some really strong manufacturing. In John Deere has 2 large plants in both Dubuque and Waterloo, and then Collins Radio here in Cedar Rapids is a very large military contractor. So a good blend of agriculture and manufacturing, and traditionally has gone back and forth from R to D, and I believe it's going to be a good year for the Ds.
Yeah, I think so too. It hopefully, particularly with the big, beautiful wealth transfer to the rich bill that is, I guess, tied up in the Senate right now. I don't know about your district, but I know here in Western North Carolina, it's if it goes through, it's going to have a dramatic impact on working class people. So what kind of reception is it getting out in your area?
Very positive. I think people are what I like to call are tired of the chaos, the cruelty, and the hogwash. The meat and potato issues are really what I think are going to carry the day. Ashley Hinson, campaigned on making prices go down, the economy. She's turned her back on that. So when I talk to people, they're very interested in, they want to make sure that they can make a living, pay the bills. They want an opportunity for their kids, the American dream. And they also want to make sure that if they get sick, they're not going to go bankrupt, and then they're going to have enough money to have a decent retirement. And all those things right now, the chaos, the uncertainty of what's going on. And I mean, if we called Ashley Hinson a basketball referee, she swallowed the whistle. I mean, she's a rubber stamp for what's going on. Yeah. And it's just not being well received, in all corners when I visit with people.
Yeah, she sounds like Chuck Edwards in a skirt, because he's the same. The guy I'm running against is just a rubber stamp. Whatever he's told to do, he does, and whether it's good for the district or not, he doesn't care. It's he looks out for. I don't know, like your opponent, what her backers are like. I know the guy here, Chuck Edwards, I mean, he's financed by out-of-state money from big corporations that don't do business here and from out-of-state billionaires that have never set foot in the Western North Carolina mountains. But what kind of folks are
Yeah,
backing?
absolutely. There's a good share of that, and you've probably heard the controversy over our Republican Senator Joni Ernst. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
Ashley Hinson is basically her political twin. They vote the same. They've done a couple town halls on video together, and they vote the same, and so they both really seem to relish punching down, people that need government services like Medicare and SNAP rather than lifting up. And the people that really, understand this district and care about this district, that's not where they are. And so you're right, these out-of-state people that come in and, want to prop them up is really what's carried her through a couple of these elections.
yeah. Well, I'm curious. I know Joni Ernst, her comment about, hey, we're all going to die. How's that playing out in Iowa?
It's everywhere I go. People want to talk about that. And I don't know if there's a really kind of a clever T-shirt company in Iowa called Ray Gun, and they put out a shirt that says, we're all going to die, Joni Ernst, and they're selling out everywhere. And so and then, she doubled down on it in her comments about, filming that, I don't know if it was a TikTok or whatever it was in the cemetery, really sarcastically, and then ending it with, I didn't know I had to talk about the tooth fairy either. So
Yeah.
really, I think is backfiring on her, and she's doubled down on it again today. And so Ashley Hinson is really right there next to her, really her political twin, for their philosophy and their voting record. So.
Well, you mentioned you'd worked with Tom Vilsack, and he was one of the first guests we had on our podcast, and a real gentleman. And my impression of you is you're kind of cut from that same cloth. So what'd you learn from working with Tom Vilsack?
Well, I mean, I'll talk about three of my political heroes. So I met Tom Vilsack. I came back to Iowa in '92, and there hadn't been a Democratic governor, I don't know, like in 30 years. And so I met Tom Vilsack and decided that he could be the guy that could take it back. And he talked a lot about it's time to rotate the crops. I mean, that was kind of his theme. And he really emphasized the rural economy and how education in Iowa had taken a dip. And so, worked hard, listened to people. As another hero of mine, Tom Harkin, he stood up for fairness. The Americans with Disability, the Lilly Ledbetter, all those kind of actions really have helped lift up people over the years. And I'll throw on another hero is Governor Bob Ray, who was a governor when I was younger, growing up. And, all this talk about immigration and how it's not positive for the United States. When Governor Ray was governor, he saw what was going on in Southeast Asia after the Vietnam War and welcomed those people into Iowa, what they called the boat people. And he did it because of the integrity and compassion and the courage to lead with purpose. And so all three of those men, in my book are what it really takes. I mean, they worked across the aisle. They worked for solutions. They tried to lift people up and find solutions to problems. So all three of them, I think, served with dignity and integrity and are real heroes of mine.
Well, we're on the topic of integrity. Who are you rooting for in the feud between Elon and Trump?
I think it's a toss-up. I think we're all going to lose out of that one, but it's been fun to watch. I guess it was just a matter of time until that bromance blew up.
Yeah, that's what I said. I don't want either one to win, but it sure is fun watching them drag each other through the mud. But it's like having to pick between explosive diarrhea and projectile vomiting. I just assume just as soon not have either one. But
yeah, right.
Yeah. Hey, let's get back to your time in the military. I know you come like me. Your dad served in the military, and then you did. What lessons did you take away from the military that you think are helpful in your run for Congress?
Well, that sense of honor. I mean, the camaraderie. I served in 3 years in the UK and then 3 in Germany during the Cold War, and I happened to be in Berlin when the wall came down. I was TDY at Tempelhof, and I didn't agree with Ronald Reagan on a lot of things, but boy, he knew what the Soviet Union was all about. I mean, I don't know if you had that chance, but had gone into East Berlin, and it was kind of like one of those movies where they go from Technicolor to black and white, and how dismal it was in East Berlin, and that's where Putin comes from. And having seen that, I mean, and then where we're at today, how, it's kind of like the baton. I mean, ever since World War II, the baton's been passed generation to generation, and NATO has kept us at peace in Europe. And it's so disappointing, so disgusting to see, how the current administration is really wants to throw that in the ash bins of history rather than recognizing that that's what's really generations have fought for to keep the peace. So I think how much the dignity and the camaraderie that I saw interagency, internationally. I mean, where I went, people thanked me for, the people that served before me, having served in Europe and won World War II. All those things I think are bring us to today, and we need to build on it, not tear it down. So I think it's the tradition and that history that really sticks with me and makes me proud that I had an opportunity to serve during that time.
But Kevin, so I think our listeners probably know I've got a background from Iowa. I grew up there in south of Des Moines and went to college at University of Iowa, and I still can't believe they gave me a degree. But I spent way too much time at the field house. But that's another podcast. So yeah, you talk about your kind of your favorite politicians in Iowa, Bob Ray, who I was a page in the legislature, and I got to know him and his chief of staff, David Oman. Really terrific people. I mean, good Iowans, good Americans, moderate in their beliefs. Tom Vilsack, again, interestingly enough, I was out of politics for a while. I'd restarted the Iowa Young Democrats and then kind of took a back seat for about 10 years. And I got back involved in politics because of Tom Vilsack too. And Tom Harkin, my father was county chair in Warren County, and we helped Tom lose his first congressional campaign. So we've got a lot of similar history, but all three of those gentlemen are from a different time, Kevin or Colonel. And how are you going to bridge the gap? I mean, those guys, I think, one, because they were decent people and they worked their asses off, which I think you've got both those characteristics, but Democrats have got to get a lot tougher, even in Iowa these days. So how are you going to campaign and win?
Well, I think there's been so much misinformation and punching down on people that I think we need to remind them government can be a force for good. And that, I mentioned the meat and potato issues that we have to address so that people know that Democrats are going to help people get back to where they want to be, and instead of always struggling to make ends meet. But I'm thinking about this. My mom died in 1978 at age 42, and my daughter is 22. And my opponent keeps talking about how the federal government is worthless. So if you look at where women in 1978 were compared to today, and I think, Mo, you have a daughter as well. So like Tom Harkin, the Lilly Ledbetter Act, at that time, women that could get unequal pay, and until they made that act, that was not protected. If you were a woman in 1978, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, I mean, you had to have a man sign for credit cards or get you a loan. You could be fired if you were pregnant, so the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. Tom Harkin fought hard for the ADA bill. And then, there's a lot of talk about women and girls sports. Title IX came into effect, and really all the women and girls that compete in sports have benefited from that. And that's what my opponent calls worthless. And I think they've gotten away with that too much. I mean, the people that we're talking about, the heroes, and I think that tradition is still possible, that it's only worthless when you have people like Ashley Hinson that don't really appreciate what it takes to make a positive impact. I mean, she's come out for the cuts to Medicaid. Half the babies born in my district were born with Medicaid services, and so so many people, so many kids rely upon the SNAP program, the food, whether it's at school or for the food stamps. And all those things really show what a force positive government can have. And there's been so much information about how government doesn't do anything. It's worthless, fraud, waste, and abuse. I mean, I led two organizations that went after fraud, waste, and abuse, Inspection and Appeals, where we had a Medicaid fraud unit, brought in millions of dollars in fraud at the U.S. Attorney's Office. Going after fraud, waste, and abuse was one of our biggest goals. And we had great success. So there's a lot of good work that's been done by the federal government that goes unrecognized because we have so many politicians like Ashley Hinson just punching down, saying it's worthless. I think we need to do a better job of telling those stories and fighting for what's right and what's going to make people's lives better.
Yeah, you're right. I think a lot of that is based upon people like your opponent's ignorance. They have no idea because they've never had to rely upon any help from the government or help from folks. So, and the other problem, Kevin, is, the people that you're talking about helping and protecting, they don't vote at a high enough rate. So how are we going to, there's a dichotomy here. I mean, we want to help people, and that's the spirit that public servants bring. And but we got to win a campaign, and we're defending and trying to help people that frankly aren't listening to us and aren't voting. So how do we change that in Iowa?
Well, it's a ground game. I mean, I talked to a former congressman from this part of Iowa yesterday, Dave Nagel, and talked about him about the ground game he used, back in the day. It's a few elections ago, but it starts people to people, neighbor to neighbor. Candidly, Iowa lost a lot of that when we lost first in the nation caucus because the Iowa party had really relied upon the national candidates to come in and provide staff. And so that's taken a step back. There's some new energy in a group called Grassroots that's going to connect. It actually, for the first time, has listed all these interest groups that are interested in what we're talking about, that want to work at different aspects of it. So they even know who, the left hand knows what the right hand's doing and where they're going to meet. The Indivisible group has had some very strong rallies in Iowa, small cities and big cities coming out, and they're working hard to get those people to register to vote. So it's going to be the ground game, people working with organizations that have the same goals and aspirations and fighting for the good stuff.
Yeah, I want to get back to, you're talking about your time, being over at Tempelhof when the wall came down. You and I spent, countless hours, sweating our asses off in chem warfare gear, preparing to take on the Soviet Union and Russia. And now we learn that Canada is our enemy and Russia is our friend. Could you ever imagine that we would be in the place that we're in now?
Absolutely not. It's completely upside down. It makes no sense. And it really makes you wonder, what's going on under the hood with why people would even consider that to be a worthy policy goal. I mean,
right.
I have a T-shirt that says NATO equals good, Putin equals bad. And I think that sums it up pretty well. So,
yeah, it seemed to be a pretty, we had a pretty clear picture of who our friends were and who our enemies were. And to do a 180 like we've done is just hard to imagine, if you go back 10, 15 years that we'd be at the place that we are now. And I'm really disappointed. Like I said, I'm glad to see veterans run, and particularly former members of the JAG Corps. We've got other, some of our colleagues, Ted Lieu is serving from California. Of course, on the Senate side, we got Lindsey Graham and Roger Wicker. So, the Air Force JAG Corps is stepped up and done pretty well. And I think can bring some skills to the table that would be good for the country. But, I got to say, I'm disappointed that some of our former colleagues like Lindsey Graham and Roger Wicker seem to aid and abet this tearing down of our traditional alliances and denigration of the military.
Yeah, I think we shared that we both knew Lindsey Graham way back in the day. He was the first, he was a circuit trial counsel in the first case I ever heard as a judge advocate. So I've known Lindsey a long time. Didn't talk a lot of politics back then, but never saw, followed him through his time with John McCain. I mean, I admired a lot of things about John McCain, and then to see him not stick up for John McCain's memory in recent times has been really disappointing and hard to understand.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm the same way. My first trial I ever did was in 1984, and one of my opponents, I was on the, as folks that don't know, in the JAG Corps, you typically start out on the prosecution side. So it was my first trial. I was a member of the prosecution team, and one of the members of the defense team was a young captain from South Carolina named Lindsey Graham. And so, like you, I've known him for over 40 years, and worked with him and John McCain on drafting the legislation for the military commissions at Guantanamo Bay. And they were the two that were pushing back against the Bush administration and complaining about the abuse of executive authority. And boy, you're not seeing that out of them now, and that really is disappointing. What's your take now on? I was always a big advocate. I taught at Howard University, the law school, for 4 years, and a number of my students, I encouraged them to consider a career in the military. I don't know that I would do that today, because when you and I served, whether it was Reagan or Clinton or Obama, whoever it was, Democrat, Republican, I maybe didn't agree on some of the policies, but I never questioned that they had my back. And I just don't have that feeling with our current commander in chief. So what's your take on the current state of our military?
Well, I watched the confirmation hearing with Hegseth, and where he basically denigrated judge advocates. He called JAGs jag-offs, and was totally dismissive. And I've talked to my colleagues that served, and those that served at a higher level than I did, and they said the same sentence that I did. That's just not the way it's done. Rule of law of armed conflict, the Geneva Convention, those are all cornerstones of what's made America, America. We do it the right way. We do it the honorable way. It doesn't mean that there hasn't been mistakes. I admired how you stuck up for what you believe to be right in Guantanamo Bay. And you paid a price sometimes for giving your opinion, but that's the integrity that really takes to be a leader in the military. And when you put somebody like Hegseth at the top, he's done things that an airman that I defended as a circuit defense counsel would have been court-martialed. And so that's just not right. And, our Senator Joni Ernst got a lot of kudos when she ran as being a combat veteran. She served in the Guard, and she's turned her back on that heritage completely. So I think overall, you mentioned some leaders earlier that, served in the first Trump administration and left because they didn't appreciate his leadership or agree with his leadership. I think overall that's gonna carry the day, but I think we have to stay true and band together and not let this moment take over where this country needs to head and has always headed in the past.
Yeah, it's really sad that you mentioned a couple of things like the Geneva Conventions. The U.S. led the effort to create the Geneva Conventions and the law of war. The Convention Against Torture, we led the effort to create the Convention Against Torture. But in NATO, we led the effort to create NATO, and all these institutions and norms that we were so proud of. To see them just go by the wayside I think we can do more damage in a couple of years than we can make up for in a couple of decades. So I think it's going to be a long road to repair. If I was from another country that, I would question, the U.S.'s commitment to being an ally, given what's happened over the last couple of years.
Well, absolutely. And I think all we can do is, be a voice for what we believe and what we know and the heritage that we come from. And I'm optimistic. I think it's going to carry the day, and this is going to be a blimp on the larger American history, but it doesn't mean that we can't ignore all these transgressions. That's for sure.
Yeah, I hope so. It seems like a pendulum, it swings from one side to the other. So I hope we've kind of reached the zenith of wherever we're going to the right, and we start swinging back towards the middle. But again, it's hard to imagine, the Hegseth debacle with sharing war plans with his wife and others on a phone you can buy at your mall. It's just unimaginable. Like you and I have seen people go to jail and lose their careers for lesser transgressions. But if you don't hold people at the top accountable, then that rot permeates down. So I was really disappointed. Our senator from here, Tom Tillis, was going to lead the effort to derail the Hegseth nomination. But then Trump threatened to find a primary challenger in our Senator Cave. Not exactly a profile in courage, but it's disappointing to see someone like Hegseth at the helm in the Pentagon.
Absolutely. The only time I'd ever tried to contact Joni Ernst was after that hearing and let her know I thought that he's a terrible candidate to be the Secretary of Defense. And I got a letter back 2 weeks after the vote had happened, and she said she thought he was the right guy for the race. So terrible, terrible all the way around.
All right. Well, what gives you hope? I mean, obviously, you don't step up and take on the task that you're taking on if you didn't have, hope in your heart. So, what is it that
well, I think it goes back to that heritage that I talked about. I mean, I think Iowa, at its core, has been a force positive, going back through time, and I think that's still there. I mentioned that this district had gone for Obama twice. I think that when I talk to people, I think that this district is kind of a third. There's a third of people they're going to be with the MAGA crowd, no matter what. There's a third in the middle that have gone back and forth, and depending on where the pendulum is on those issues that we talked about, and then there's a third that's going to be there for the Democratic candidates. And so where we've slipped is that middle group, and so I think there's been lack of focus on those meat and potato issues. And when I go out and talk to people about making sure that we're going to work on making sure that the American dream is still alive and their kids are going to have a life, have an opportunity for a life better than they have, and they're not going to go bankrupt if they get sick, and they're going to have a decent retirement. Those are all the issues that people, I think, are at the top of mind. And so often the race has been taken off into these issues that aren't important. Trying to talk about these culture wars, and we've kind of got caught up in that. And we need to push that aside and talk about where people live and what they really care about.
So, Kevin, tell us a little bit about your opponent. Where is she vulnerable? How can you beat her? And
yeah, then... absolutely. Well, this race has been rated as competitive. We've got one more notch to go until it's a toss-up, but it's been rated as competitive, so that's a strong start. And actually, our long time Senator Charles Grassley has sent out emails to Republican donors saying that this is one of those districts that could flip the House back from red to blue. So I'm going to work hard and run through the finish line. And it's gonna take. And your listeners, I mean, I could use your support. I mean, and as Mo knows, it runs into, you got to have the resources you have to define yourself before your opponent defines you. And they're gonna try their best to do that and take it off message. When I first announced, they wanted to call me a radical left-wing socialist, which anybody takes a look at my record knows that that's just garbage. But I mean, that's the game plan they do. So I'm available at kevinforiowa.com. You can go to my website. It'll talk you about my history and the race. And Ashley Henson comes from a much different place. She comes from a bit of a blue blood family in Des Moines, West Des Moines. She doesn't talk about that. She went to the University of Southern California, which I affectionately call the University of Spoiled Children. I guess she couldn't get into University of Iowa or Iowa State or University of Northern Iowa or many of our other fine small colleges, and she doesn't have any sense of the advantages that she had growing up. She was one of those people that was kind of born on third base and thinks she hits a triple, and doesn't realize how much people count on for government to the Medicaid. She's basically the hogwash that she's slopping around talking about young men in their basement, that's a magnificent problem that she's going to cure, that's going to make Medicaid stronger, is just hogwash. And so I'm looking forward to having those discussions with her, because as she was a newscaster, she went to Southern Cal and then came back, and she was a news reader, really. And if we measured her statements by a journalistic, I think she gets a big fat F, because the things she says are just not accurate. They're just not true. She talks talking points. She likes to slap labels. And I think people are hungry for a real discussion on the issues and drill down. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And that's why I'm optimistic that we can flip this race and flip this seat back to blue.
And I doubt USC even plays in Iowa. I think they've beat the Hawkeyes in a couple games that probably are not helpful. I think you need to rub that in. I know actually USC pretty well. They used to be a client of mine, and I couldn't agree with you more. It's a bunch of rich little fuckers that have no concept of reality. So anyway, I encourage you to take the gloves, Kevin. I mean, I know there's a tradition in the Democratic Party to, let's not go there, let's go high when they go low kind of shit. And those days are over. And unless you're willing to play the game they play, it's going to be a tough road to hoe or a tough row to hoe. And I say that out of experience. We went after Boebert and in Colorado and almost got rid of her, not by taking the high road, but by putting facts out about her. And I'm not suggesting, that you as an attorney go against your instincts for the truth and facts and the law. But I think in order to win in a district like this, you got to take the gloves off and come at her with facts about this USC stuff. I think that plays well. It will play well for you. So are you going to take the gloves off, or are you going to play the traditional Democrat hope we win kind of strategy?
Well, I take your points. Well taken that we have to talk. We have to talk tough. I mean, I'm a fighter. But my record backs that up. I mean, I've served, led the largest law enforcement agency in the state of Iowa, a U.S. Attorney's office, and so I know what it takes to. And I don't just talk tough. I've led tough, and so I think those are kind of things that I've learned through my time to make progress. And so, yeah, I look forward to having that discussion and talking about where the state has been, where it needs to go, and how we got there. And you guys used the word muck. I used the word hogwash, and so we're gonna cut through the hogwash and get to the facts and tell the truth.
Well, we'll help you with that too, Kevin. I mean, I think one of the things we've done well is kind of be the bad cops in some of these races, and so you've got that commitment from us to help you in any way we can. I highly encourage folks, even if it's just 5 or 10 or $15, go to Kevin's website and give him a vote of confidence. I mean, this is early money. It's important that Kevin raise some money over the summer so we can have a fighting chance next year. And now's a chance to get on the ground floor of this too, because Kevin will remember your help, and we will certainly encourage folks to go to his website. So Kevin, give us the website one more time, please.
Yeah, the easiest way to remember it is just kevinforiowa.com.
There we go. Perfect. That's very easy to remember. So listen, I a big fan of candidates. You're a first-time candidate. I think you are.
Yes, first-time candidate.
First-time candidate. All right. So you've got a little bit of a learning curve, but you've been around politics. I remember my first time I ran, I had no idea what I was doing, but ended up being such a great experience for me because I was new to North Carolina, and I got a chance to get to know where I live and people. And so I assume you're hitting the trail.
Absolutely. Gonna start doing I've met many of the county chairs already, but as summer comes around, there's more and more events. Been invited to actually a couple of churches to make a talk about issues, and so near and far. Going to be up to Alameda County, which is the far northeast corner. Really a beautiful place. Really one of the most beautiful sites in the world.
The Culver families from that part of Iowa.
Well, they were down in McGregor. Yeah. They had a place up there.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place along the Mississippi River. Yeah. And so do you have a primary?
No one is officially announced. There's some scuttlebutt. I mean, if we used a baseball analogy, I'd say I'm up on the field playing ball. There's maybe somebody in the dugout, and there's maybe a couple people out in the parking lot. It's a long ways to that, but no one officially has jumped in yet.
All right. And I assume you'll get the 2 Toms as an endorsement or help along the way?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. So that's a good sign. Tom Vilsack and Tom Harkin behind Kevin. They are actually stalwarts in the Democratic Party. And
Christy Vilsack as well. I mean, she's run as a candidate.
Yeah. And she ran against that knucklehead up in Northeast Iowa.
Steve King. So there's
Northwest.
A good history of really strong candidates that have all lent their support and are going to be there. And so there's a real hunger to take the state back. Since we have entirely our delegation. So we got
and hey, Christy and Tom are back home. So
absolutely,
and they were the ones that turned it around, back in the, what was it, early or late 90s or late 80s,
98,
early
yeah.
90s.
And we've got a really strong governor's race going. We've got strong candidates. So we're going to have a tough ticket, a real strong ticket, top to bottom. And it's going to be a good year for Democrats in Iowa. I have a strong belief.
Well, I hope so. And what about farmers? I assume that
the uncertainty of the tariffs is killing them.
Yeah,
just like small business or big businesses, you need that certainty. And these tariffs, where the largest chunk of their selling soybeans to China is all in jeopardy. And so last time that Trump did this, he tried to make it go away and cut him a check to take away some of the economic pain. But there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of angst in the agricultural community, and it hasn't played out all the way yet, but it's not headed in a positive direction for the economy in Iowa, because the farm economy is, a cornerstone so often in not only the small cities, but the big cities as well.
Yeah, and the last thing a farmer really wants is another check from the government. I mean, I know they'll take it and they'll begrudgingly use it, but they just assume sell the product and earn that stuff without a government check. So what's your strategy?
There's other parts of that too. I mean, there was a rural, more and more farming is rely upon the internet services and broadband, and so that program has been cut out, and so that's in jeopardy. There's a program at the University of Iowa hospitals called the Holden Cancer, which is to try to bring cancer services for rural health. With the cuts in that's been wiped out. So we can go down, we could probably have another hour of all the programs that have been cut. SNAP is a strong program for the Agriculture Committee. That's been gashed too in this budget. So, top to bottom, many programs that the rural community, farm community, smaller cities count on have been gutted in this budget and Doge. And so the pain of that is just starting to be felt, and there's a lot of angst, a lot of concern where this is all headed.
Yeah, people don't realize that that what we used to call food stamps, it actually employs a lot of people, because folks that need food are getting food. Well, that product's being sold at full price. There aren't any discounts on that. So that's another area that I think people often overlook. So I have one more question, and I'll throw it back to more question. I'll throw it back to Mo.
Yeah.
So what's your strategy on getting out to connect with farmers? It's a group we've lost. They used to be with us. FDR, Truman, and JFK. Farmers used to be with us. How are you going to get some of those folks back to vote?
Well, I have some good farm family friends, and we're going to just have discussions. I don't know, you call them town halls, you call them meeting in the barn, but so that's going to begin. We're going to go around to county and invite those conversations and talk about, what we call where the rubber meets the road. And because we need to rotate the crops, because there's a huge farm bill that's due it was supposed to pass last year, and they just kicked the can down the road again. And so that's critical. And so those components are all up for grabs. It's going to be in the authorization, coming up in the next Congress. And so we're going to talk about that. What's most important. And, Tom Harkin was one of the real good architects of that when he was in the Senate. And I know that he's interested in that and wants to, be a force positive of that along the way as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you mention about, how they've tried to label you. I had the same, when I ran back in 2020, I got the same kind of, communist, socialist, globalist, pedophile, all the buzzwords that they've been taught to regurgitate. And it's really annoying. Like, with your background, military, U.S. attorney, public safety, to get labeled or mislabeled like that by the other side is just, I don't know, to me, it's disgusting that people stoop to that level. So how are you going to fight back against that? Because it's coming.
Well, that was one of the pieces of advice that Tom Vilsack gave me. He said, I'm very sure there's not any skeletons in your closet, but doesn't mean they're not going to make some about you. And so, what we're talking about, you need to have resources. You have to raise money because most people don't pay that much attention to this until the very end. And so that's why it's early. That's why I started this early, because you need to build your team. You need to build the support. So this time next year and beyond, you have the resources to make sure you don't get buried in negative ads. And unfortunately, that's the system we have. You can do the ground game. You can do as much as you can that way. But and that's changed. It's digital. It's YouTube. It's not only radio and TV. So it's really changed the dimensions, and it's a critical part of this is what I've learned.
Yeah, I'm hoping, one thing that really hurt last time is for me, right after the primary, like 2 days later, the headlines were nothing but COVID. And I think Democrats did the right thing and took the responsible approach and chose not to hold big mega spreader events. But, this is a lot of our counties here are pretty remote. And you mentioned the defunding the program to help expand broadband. We have 80,000 households in Western North Carolina that don't have broadband. So during COVID, trying to campaign using Zoom just didn't work in those outlying areas where you got to be there on the ground to meet the people. And I think being there on the ground and meeting the people makes it harder for the other side then to mislabel you. I mean, I think once they meet you and get to know you, it's harder to sell that, this guy's a globalist or a socialist or a whatever, derogatory term they're going to try to peg you with.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's why that ground game is so important.
Yeah, you got to meet people where they are. Well, listen, I really appreciate you stepping up. I think when I ran last time, I talked about how, the phrase, this is the most important election in our lifetime gets, used every time there's an election. But damn, this one coming up really that label fits. So, man, I really admire you for stepping up and doing this. It's not an easy job to take on.
Well, likewise, you're one of the people that when people mentioned that I should consider this, I knew your example, and so admire your stepping up as well. So I appreciate that support.
Absolutely.
Well, Kevin, remember Vilsack's first campaign for governor when Lightfoot tried to label him as that he had voted for strip clubs near schools.
Right.
And that was a breaking point for voters. They said, you know what? We know Tom Vilsack well enough to know he's not for this. Now you're lying to us. So I imagine you're going to have a close race and it's going to come down to the wire. But the more we get to know her, the more voters in Iowa get to know her, I'm sure the more votes are going to be swinging your way, man. So we wish you the best out on the campaign trail. Hope you'll come back and give us updates. We're inviting candidates to come back and just do a 5-minute update.
Yeah, be glad to.
And again, folks, we've had Kevin Techau on our podcast today. KevinForIowa.com. Please go over there and toss Kevin a couple bucks to encourage him. He's got Tom Vilsack, Tom Harkin, and other folks in Iowa behind him. And he needs your help today, not in August or September. He needs it now. So,
hey, Kevin, I was going to ask one more thing. If you win, would you guys take David Wheeler back?
Wait a minute. I got to rethink this. Yeah. I got to rethink this.
Yeah. I think the Vilsacks, Christy and Tom would probably move back to Washington if I went back to Iowa. So anyway, God, Kevin, it's been great to reconnect with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really appreciate you guys. And I've been listening to your podcast. I especially like the Paul Bagallo. One that he's been a longtime hero of mine, and I think we both share the Buck Up, Suck Up book is one of our go-tos. So
and don't hesitate to use Mo's phrase that kicking ass for the working class. I think that works, and I think probably works in rural Iowa too. So take it when you can get it, I guess. So. All right, well, that's it for this episode, American Muckrakers Podcast. Fuck you. I'm David Wheeler signing off with the Colonel Mo Davis, the Colonel Mo Davis. If you enjoyed this show, follow us, share it, and check out AmericanMuckrakers.com for more or to support us. Thank you to our guest, Kevin Techau. Learn more about Kevin at KevinForIowa.com. Until next time, keep your eye on the long game. Don't stop believing truth matters. And whenever a MAGA moron annoys you, just tell them. What do you tell them, Mo?
Muck you.
This has been Muck You, co-hosted by Colonel Mo Davis in Asheville, North Carolina, and David Wheeler in Spruce Pine, North Carolina. Thanks to our guest today, Colonel Kevin Techau, a candidate for Congress in Iowa's 2nd District. Please donate and learn more about Colonel Techau's campaign at KevinTECHAU.com. Follow us on Blue Sky under AmericanMuckrakers.com and on Substack at AmericanMuckrakers.substack.com. Muck You is produced by American Muckrakers, copyright 2025. You can learn more and donate at AmericanMuckrakers.com. David and Mo hope you all come back soon for a new episode. And remember to never take shit from anyone, especially